Welcome everyone to the May meeting for the Ignite CDA, Coeur d'Alene's Area's Urban Renewal Agency. If you'd all please stand and help me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to take a moment to welcome Amy Evans, our new board member. So thank you for being here, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
And now you have 5 minutes for a speech. Welcome.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate having you here. It's time for public comment. Anybody have any public comment? Please come forward and give your name and address.
Hello, my name is Chris Gugamus. I live in Coeur d'Alene. I've been staging the concerts at the Pocket Park on Sherman Avenue between 3rd and 4th Street for many years. The first year was 1992. I'm excited about all the renovations that are going on for the park. And I just want to say personally, it would be great if the park was ready by July 15th to stage concerts there this year. And that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank
Any
you.
questions?
Thanks, Chris. Nice to see you, Chris. Thanks.
Thank you.
No questions. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, we're going to have a presentation from the Coeur d'Alene Rotary about the Coeur d'Alene new Pocket Park. Jody and John and Bob.
And John.
Hi, my name is Bob Burton, members of the Ignite Group. Wanted to give you just a brief history, just to kind of catch us up to where we are. Obviously, we're here because, as you can see, they're going to talk about this a little later, but our budget is a little higher than what we anticipated when we started this project. And so we're here to see if we can get some help. I want to talk about how we got to this point. So back in 2013-14, our club approved a proposal for a major project that would serve our community while honoring our club's history. And since that time, funds have been set aside each and every year to try to come up with a program. We set a group of past presidents, which we called the President's Council. It was established to establish guidelines, and also we've narrowed down the projects. Initially, there were about 13 different proposals for our project. It was narrowed down to 3 in the fall of 2020. This project that we have was chosen by our club with almost, it was 100% support. And how we got here, this was actually started with the Downtown Association. They were the ones that presented this idea of turning this pocket park into so we would have our project there. At the time, if you recall, this was owned by a private individual out of Seattle. And I know that the city of Coeur d'Alene and the Downtown Association had been interested in purchasing this property for a while, but he was not really intent on selling it. However, when the Rotary Club says, yeah, this would be great, maybe we can figure out a way to get this done, we had Jack Riggs, who's a member of our club, and who was an owner of Pita Pit and was next door to this Pocket Park. He knew the owner, so he was able to contact him, advise him that this was a Rotary project, and would he be interested in selling? And he said, yeah, I would be interested in selling. And so he came up with a price of $525,000. Obviously, we didn't have $525,000 from the club, but so we contacted Ignite to see if, in fact, you would be willing to assist in this project. Initially, Ignite, so we purchased, you purchased a project along with us. We put in $25,000 for the purchase. You put in at that time $500,000. It was a $525,000 project for the cost, just for the land. We committed then to expend our other funds that we had, which at the time was about $275,000. So we had basically $300,000 into it. You had $500,000. So he wanted it closed by the end of 2020. And so we were able to get that done, even though we just barely got started on it. Things moved quickly. We were able to get it done, and the deed was passed in December of 2020. In January of 2021, then we began, Jody and I are co-chairs of this project, and we began to appoint committees to come up with this. Ultimately, we had like 5 different committees. There was a lot of different things, but one of them was a design committee. And that we started that in January of 2021. The final design was approved by our club. Then we met with many entities. Once we had, what this project was going to look like. And you're going to see the video. We've shown it to you before, but we're going to see it again so you have an idea to remember what it looks like, what we have promised to do. And so we had met with many, many groups, everything from the Park and Rec Committee, the Parking Commission, Downtown Association, Chamber of Commerce, ultimately the City Council. So we met with the Parks and Recreation Committee in August of 2021. Now our goal at the time was that we were going to start this project in the fall of 2021, so it would be completed. Actually, our goal was that it would have been completed by now. However, when we met with the Parks and Rec Committee in August, they had to approve it first in order to recommend it to the City Council. And they recommended that we go back and meet with some additional people before they would adopt it, work out some kinks that they felt might be there. So we did. We went back to work and met with some additional people and got the approval. However, we weren't able to get back on the agenda with the Parks and Recreation Committee until October. And so we met with them on October 18th, and then they did in fact approve it and recommended it go up to the City Council. So then it was put on the agenda for the City Council in November. So it was November the 16th that we met with the City Council and ultimately then got it approved, as well as the memorandum of understanding, which was between our club, Ignite, and the City of Coeur d'Alene. So I say that because when you look at the budget, we're over budget, but we intended to start this and have it started and completed by now. And as you know, how things have gone up in price, so we're a little over budget. We're going to let them talk about that. So, Jody?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to turn it over to John here. He's going to talk a little bit. We're going to show you the video again of the fly-through, just to give you a reminder of what that is. And then I'm going to have John talk about the construction cost. So I'll turn it over to John. John he's our design committee chair, and he's been giving of his time through all of this, so we're very appreciative of him because he has really helped us as we navigate through this, so here we go.
Good afternoon. Did you guys see Steve sitting in the park having his lunch? So, thank you again for allowing us to come here. We presented to the Finance Committee a week ago and are glad to be here and talk about dollars and cents. Bob alluded to it. I think anybody that lives in North Idaho or lives in the United States right now recognizes that we've got some serious issues with costs. We did put together a budget for this project. As we worked through the design, we started the design back in February of last year, and we had a conceptual design finished in about May of last year. As we got to that point, John Mueller was, who's done many of the parks here in town, John put together a conceptual budget for the project. And based on that, we were like, okay, well, let's go ahead and go forward. Right about that time, we threw a big wrench in the works. Because as we listened to people and as we talked to people around the community, one of the things that popped up is, how do we make this park special? How do we make it so it jumps off the sidewalk out at you? So what did we do? We jumped out into the street with it. So, in construction, anybody that's been involved in construction can appreciate something that we talk about. We call it scope creep. So our first scope creep was, we went ahead and pushed this park out into the street. Why? Because everybody that was involved on the design committee, everybody that reviewed and approved the design, all felt that if we did that, not only our local citizens, but everybody entering the city is going to drive down Sherman Avenue and see this park, see this oasis of green among these, our classic buildings, and soon, I'm sure, more and more high-rises in downtown Coeur d'Alene. So we felt as a design committee that it was a good departure from our original design, and we went forward with it. That was the design that we carried forward and had the approvals from Ignite initially, from the Parking Commission, Parks and Rec, everywhere that Bob said that we'd gone. So where did we go from there? Well, once this was approved by City Council, we had our design consultants go ahead and finish the documents and create a set of documents that we could submit for building permit, and we could also take and get multiple competitive bids. So my firm went out and got competitive bids for all the concrete out there, all the landscaping, the water feature, the electrical, all the different components that make this up. My firm is coordinating this construction at a zero fee. We're not charging a dime to to the Rotary Club. I'm donating all of my time. I just feel it's the right thing to do to go ahead and make this thing come together. As it's all come together, you can see that there's some significant costs in there. Concrete right now is 35% higher than it was last fall. I don't need to tell any of you guys where gasoline and diesel is. I mean, and everything that's related to construction has some component of petroleum product. Landscape and irrigation, just all the pieces and parts are a little bit higher. They're significantly higher than we had budgeted almost a year ago. So we looked at it, we were asked by a number of different people, hey, can we piece and part this? What can we pull out? What can we take away? What could we do later? And the consensus among the co-chair committee and the past presidents for our Rotary Club was, well, we can't. I mean, if we take something away, first, we'd have to go back to the starting board, or to the drawing board. Why? Because we took this concept and we pitched it to every one of these stakeholders in our community. We pitched it to the Chamber and the Downtown Association, our Rotary Club, the City Council, Parks and Rec, the Parking Commission. I mean, we pitched this. So if we start taking pieces and parts out of it, we felt that, I mean, to be genuine, we'd have to take and go through that whole process again. So the costs are much higher than what we expected. We're diligently trying to make sure that we can be as efficient as we can putting this together. So if there's any savings that's realized by the share from Ignite, because Ignite is the last one in. You guys have already committed an additional $25,000 to our budget last fall. With the agreement is the Ignite dollars are the last in. So if we do a better job than we've projected on this budget, we're not going to be spending as much of Ignite's money as is possible, provided you guys help us out a little bit more. And with that,
Okay.
our money lady's going to talk.
They leave it to the banker. All right, so let's talk about, so we did a thorough budget. I'll walk you through this. So in February of 2021 here, this is where we were in terms of what money we had. We knew we had $275,000 in our bank for our Centennial Fund, the additional $25,000 that Ignite was gonna give back to us, and our cost estimate, which was on the previous slide of $310,295. It left us with a negative of $10,295. Each year, our president in June would donate $30,000 to the Centennial Fund. So we knew we had another $30,000 coming in to make up for that deficit. So we knew we were gonna actually be ahead around $20,000 in June of 2021. So as we look at it now, we have, thanks to the stock market, our bank account has gone up to $277,000, the additional $25,000 from Ignite. We went to our Rotary Club and said, what more can we do? And so we had been setting aside $30,000 each year for a next project. So there was $60,000 there that we were able to use, and they said, this project, we need to do this one first before we start saving for the next. So we were able to dig up $100,000 from our Rotary Club to contribute to this. And so that left us with a deficit of $84,748. And so and in terms of contributions, this is the Rotary Club's contribution. Our bottom line is $421,488. Our request for you today is an additional $100,000 to help with the increase in the construction cost. The deficit is $84,748. We just don't know because it's such an unknown world with construction right now. So we were asking for $100,000. We will use our Rotary money first, and then we will start using the Ignite money. What we don't use, we'll obviously give back. And so right now, with that $100,000 request, Ignite would have invested $625,000 into this project. Is there any questions on that?
Questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Steve?
Jody, maybe John can answer this one too. So basically went from 310 to 486 and it's a combination of two things. The project got a little bigger and the cost increase, $176,000 higher. Do we have a rough breakdown of what the cost increase is versus what the scope, the change in
The
scope
previous
is?
slide had the breakdown on it, Steve.
Yeah.
And so John's breakdown, John's original scope, this was done when we were in the conceptual.
Can I get you to step up to the mic, please?
Whoops. Okay, sorry about that. The spreadsheet on the left is the conceptual budget. That was done when we had a conceptual design. And as you can see, there's a number of items in the middle of the concrete is probably one of the largest things that's in there. Let me see if I can find the line item for it. The flat work, concrete flat work, about 12,000, or there's 17 and 1229, 39, there's about 40,000. The actual cost is 125,000. And that's just, that's a function of the market. I had multiple people look at it. The products are more expensive, the labor's more expensive. I mean, that's a huge portion of the cost overrun. Some of the other items, I mean, just small items like the demolition and earthwork they're actually a little bit lower, electrical's a little bit higher. We added some other scopes in terms of fencing, things like that, because we want to fence along the backside of the alley to protect the equipment and everything else like that. So as the design was fleshed out, as it was finished out, we increased the scope because there were certain things that we had to do. One of the reasons the electrical is as high as it is this is a public park in our downtown. And so there's a higher demand or a higher responsibility by the city, because the city's taken this over, to make sure that it's lit in such a way that there's no risk to any pedestrians or users in the later hours of the day.
Thank you.
Well, I guess just if, and this is a brutal time for a lot of us on a lot of things, and we've got other things on our agenda where we're going to be talking about scale of things and costs and making cuts and things, but, just maybe tackle the water feature. Now, I remember at our council meeting, we got some debate on that. Now, I happen to think that's a wonderful thing, and if I, had carte blanche, oh, yeah, and I supported that and all of that, but that was something that, generated some controversy, I guess, when we came to council, so, and then another substantial, just looking at it, somebody taking a shot, whatever, with the bronze plaques and medallions, which I can appreciate, and I remember hearing history and what that is. But to me, that's a couple of things that jump out, I guess, feedback on those.
Those are some of the very same things, Dan, that when we had our co-chairs and past presidents meeting that we talked about. And at the end of that, everybody collectively agreed that if we start taking pieces and parts out, because we've presented it this way to the community from the start, we need to restart the whole process. So we chose to go ahead and submit it this way. And, following up on what Jody said, just pointing out the obvious is the Coeur d'Alene Rotary Club has raised, when this is complete, $421,000, provided Ignite helps us out a little bit further for a park that's for the city of Coeur d'Alene. So the city of Coeur d'Alene is getting $1 million park. And, that's an incredible gift from our community.
Thanks. Further questions, comments?
I guess at some point, Mr. Chairman, we need to talk about the mechanics of contributing more money to this. We're closing the district out and the budget's set, but how would this work? If we were to.
So how will this fit into the budget, Tony, if we.
Part of it or whatever we're gonna do here.
So the latitude the board has is on the, it all involves around the Atlas project, Area 13 sale. It's, we have a purchase offer for $2.4 million, which would go to the Lake District. And part of that would go to the reimbursement of the city for their acquisition costs of the Atlas portion of the mill site that's in the Lake District. So that's the latitude the board has on timing. We know that's going to close. We hope to close it by the end of the year. And so the commission can use the funds that are targeted in the fiscal 22 budget to reimburse the city for this project, knowing that the city will be reimbursed with the sale of Area 13.
Okay.
And the Rotary did meet with Finance last week.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Rotary met with Finance last week.
Yes, sir.
Right.
So, in summary, the money would be there after all the reimbursements and so forth we have to pay. There's still money available.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know that there's many people that dislike cost overruns more than myself.
Or me.
Yeah, I'll go back to when we redid Memorial Field, and we cut some things out of the Memorial Field project that I go back and I kick myself for having done it. I think we shortchanged ourselves. We probably should have found a way to do that. I look at the project of $486,000, and John's contributing, if you were to go out to someone else to do it, John's contributing $40,000 to $50,000 of his time and effort into that. I always look at what the taxpayers are getting for their money. I think they're going to get a great project. I don't want to shortchange this project. I think they've worked hard. There's a lot of people that have worked hard to make this happen. So I would make the motion to approve the additional funding request of not to exceed $100,000 for the Rotary.
I would like to second that.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I have a question for John.
Yes,
So
sir.
your construction company is building this?
Yeah.
They're the general?
We're acting as a general contractor.
So then you're donating your time, putting the bid packets together, project management and all that?
Mm-hmm. Bless you.
So when I met you in 1996, you were volunteering on the board of United Way. So
That was a long time ago.
25 years later, you're still doing it. So thank you very much. I think it's a great project.
Thank you,
All in
guys.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, there'll be a presentation from the RFP Ad Hoc Committee for review on RFP 5.
I will take that assignment, Mr. Chairman, and pull up a slide here. So what I'm going to do is kind of walk you through the recommendation from the RFP Scoring Committee for RFP number 5, which involves quite a few areas. But just to remind everybody who the team is, we have a representative from Ignite, Welch-Comer, Heartland, and the city of Coeur d'Alene. This is the Area 5 RFP layout on the project site. You see Area 9, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. These are the kind of a summary of the 2 proposals received. We had a proposal by the Toll Brothers. Their development program involved single-family units as well as townhomes. And we have a Butler team proposal from John Butler, Ann Butler, and Todd Stam, which includes single-family units, townhomes, as well as duplex units. And let's see if I can do this. So here is a site plan of the Toll Brothers proposal. Not really, kind of a small scale, but these are all single-family units down here. So all the areas down here would have single family, and they would amass their townhomes up along Celtice on those upper areas. This is a site plan for the Butlers. They would also have single family homes down on the lower portion of the areas, as well as duplexes on one area, and they would also amass their townhomes along Celtice at the top. Toll Brothers offered us $17.6 million for the property. The Butler team offers $8.675 million for the property. The committee members scored the proposals on the following matrix, comprised of development experience, consistency with development standards and architectural design guidelines, as well as purchase price. So a total score of 200 points it was possible. This is how the scoring came out. Toll Brothers scoring 188, and the Butler team scored 156. The committee shared some thoughts on the 2 proposals. Both teams submitted good proposals. The Butler's team proposal contains several design elements that are attractive and desirable for the project, but were not enough to compel selection given the large price and offering variance. Also, a concern was expressed regarding the thoroughness of the team's due diligence efforts. Toll Brothers possesses the capacity to achieve their proposal development in concept in a timely fashion. Comment was made regarding gaining Toll Brothers insights as to what they think might be a beneficial land use for the Mount Hink site once that site is ready for development, since they will be building, if the board does award these areas to Toll, they will be the neighbor up there next to Mount Hink and probably would gain from their insights and their vast experience on what might make sense there. Toll Brothers' design concept is good, but could benefit from a few of the design elements contained in the Butler conceptual plan. So there were a few items that the committee recommended that we address with Toll Brothers if they are awarded these areas. The possibility of saving trees along Celtice Way on areas 18 and 19. So kind of jump back up here. You see how the Butler proposal saved the trees along Celtice. And Toll Brothers didn't really show that, but so that's one of the areas to pursue and make sure that we're on the same page. Encourage the use of different architectural design styles of townhomes with regards to the townhome designs already offered on areas 3 and 4. So we want a little bit of mix, kind of contrast. Discuss flexibility on area layouts, including landscape design as the areas tier up on the north, from the south to the north. Encourage a more thoughtful approach to garage design, and encourage a more thoughtful approach to back of house design on the alleys with their townhomes, kind of dress them up a little bit. So with all that, the committee recommends to the board that Toll be awarded areas 9, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19 on the Atlas project site. And myself, and Brennan, Danielle would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions? I don't see any. I'll entertain a motion then to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Great job, RFP Subcommittee. Next is the Executive Director's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to invite up Chris to talk about the Health Corridor District Rectangular Rapid Flashing Beacons Initiative.
Thank you, Ignite Board, for having me before you today.
Welcome, Chris.
Uh-oh.
Yep.
There we go, yep. I just loaded a virus onto this thing. So, a few years ago, I was getting some calls from citizens concerned about the pedestrian crossing on Ironwood in the Health Corridor. And it's essentially right across from Peak Fitness. That's our one marked crosswalk that isn't at a signalized intersection. At that time, we were in the middle of studying all these alternatives for what could go on in the health corridor, so I kept urging citizens to just be patient. We don't want to make any changes yet because this whole thing could change. But then after the most recent master planning efforts and traffic analysis, it was determined that that Ironwood itself would not change its alignment, which meant that now it might be a safe time to actually implement some pedestrian safety features at that crosswalk. So a few weeks ago, I got another call from a concerned citizen about her almost getting hit by cars out there, and they wouldn't stop while she was standing in the median there. So that's why I come before you today to ask if you will fund an RRFB, a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, which have been very successful in getting motorists to yield to pedestrians. We've been putting them in a lot of locations around town, especially near schools, and it's been very appreciated. So just to give you some context here, obviously you know the health corridor with Ironwood coming through here, and that crosswalk is right over here by Peak Fitness, right where I put the circle. So this is what it looks like in the aerial photo with that crosswalk there. And here's what it looks like approaching that location. I just took this one about a month ago. Not real visible, but and that's why we'd like to enhance that. So this is an example of an RRFB. This one is on 15th Street. I'm sure you've all seen them with their flashing lights out there. They do get drivers' attention. And my proposal here is that if Ignite provides $8,000 in funding, which is about what those cost when we purchase them through, normally we get them through a local distributor or producer in Post Falls, and they've been very good about getting them to us rather quickly and at a pretty good cost. So if Ignite agrees to fund that, we would install them much like we did here. Obviously, Tim Martin won't be helping us to stand this one up, but so anyway, that would be my request if Ignite would fund up to $8,000 for the purchase of a pair of RRFBs for Ironwood.
Oh, just going to say briefly, I think they're very effective. I think $8,000 to save a life is worth it. So I'm definitely in favor. I see them all over town, and they're very effective. They stop. I see them 100 yards in advance. They're very visible.
Yeah, they kind of startle you.
Yeah.
Chris, I'm in support of it. Just my question, as the health corridor master plan evolves and changes, and maybe there are new traffic patterns that we need to address, can these be repurposed and put somewhere else? Or is
It could be, but we don't anticipate a whole lot changing at that location. We see some changes happening to the west at Lakewood, and some driveway consolidations that Tony and I have been talking about, but this should be pretty permanent there.
Good question, though.
So, oh,
Just, you gave the example of one on 15th, but there's the other one, I mean, right down the block on Ironwood. Is this similar or different to that one?
Yes,
or-
so this one would be solar powered. The one that is east of here at, well, it's mid-block between Medina and US 95. We installed a two-stage RRFB crossing there with that project when we were working on that US 95 intersection. That one we had hardwired in electrically so that because we figured it would be well used and we didn't want the battery to be a problem. We've got battery installations all over town and it hasn't been a problem for us. So that's what we're going with this one.
Okay,
so,
Jordan.
quick question. I remember something in the past about how the width of Ironwood may be changed and widened. That's off the table now. That'll probably stay the same then? Is that what you're
Correct.
saying?
As far as I know, yeah.
Okay. Then, Tony, how are we set for funds? We, so far, haven't had much in the way of funds in this district.
We are fine for funds for $8,000 in the Health Corridor District.
Yeah, okay.
There we go.
Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
All right, I'll make a motion that we, whatever, word you call this, that we fund this, the
I'll second.
rectangular
Not to exceed.
rapid flashing
Yeah.
beacon for Ironwood Drive not to exceed $8,000.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Chris.
That'd be hard to say fast 3 times, wouldn't it?
Hard to say once.
Next item I have, Mr. Chairman, is just a discussion about the Coeur d'Alene Chamber of Commerce DDA, which is a disposition and development agreement. Just for background, the agency has been servicing the $300,000 debt obligation for the Coeur d'Alene Chamber of Commerce DDA since 2008. The DDA debt obligation pertains to the public improvements you see on the screen that were approved by the agency in 2008. The DDA calls for annual payments to be made by the agency to the Chamber on the debt obligation based on the property taxes paid annually by the Chamber. As of August 1st, 2022, which is coming up, the remaining DDA balance will be $263,000. This balance is so high because the county has granted the Chamber an 83% property tax exemption over the years, which resulted in insufficient funds to the agency to satisfy the $300,000 debt obligation. I discussed this issue with the Finance Committee, and even though we're not obligated under the DDA contract to pay this off, since there weren't property taxes generated to satisfy the debt before the district officially ends on 9/30/22, we still have the latitude to pay that debt off if the board so chooses. So I bring this forward to the board for discussion and conversation. Danielle can assist me on any legal aspects of it, but we think it's a viable conversation to have at this time.
And this proposal, naturally, we've got the money in the bank to pay for it.
It would be the same conversation we had about Area 13 and reimbursing the city. So that's kind of the latitude the board once again has for like the Rotary Park project and this initiative. The funds are available with the caveat that the city would be reimbursed from the sale of Area 13 when it closes.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, the question I have is that, do we have any idea if this was granted, what the funds would be used for?
I've invited a couple of our chamber representatives, Linda, to come up, and we anticipated that question, and she has some ideas. And Rick.
Thank you all for inviting us to be here.
Can you please do introductions?
Sure, my name is Linda Koppes, and I am the president and CEO of the Coeur d'Alene Regional Chamber.
And I am Rick Rasmussen. I am the chairman of the board for the regional chamber.
Welcome, thanks.
Thank you. So I'm recently pretty new to my position, so I was hired as the permanent president and CEO in December. And since I've taken my role, I've been working very closely with Rick and our board of directors on all kinds of different ideas for the chamber. And those ideas were generated prior to me even having the conversation with Tony about how we might think about revitalizing the space. So, one option we talked about is of course we could always use funds to pay down our loan. So we have about $1.4 million that we owe on the loan. However, our board has worked very closely over the last couple of years to do a refinance, and so our monthly payment went from $19,000 a month down to $6,000 a month. And we can make those funds with our membership renewals, and we have no issues in making those payments. And after discussing, we thought of other ideas on how we could use those funds in a different way to actually breathe more life into that building. It's about 15 years old, and at one point in time, I've been looking back through the archives and data, and there were about 35,000 people that walked through those doors in a given year. And in the last couple of years, we're about 9,000 people. And that's a big difference. And it's sitting on the most beautiful property in our city. And there's a big giant metal heart outside the building. And in my mind, every time I see it, I think this should be the heart of the city. And we need to make sure that it's bustling with people and that all kinds of community members and visitors to our areas are using it. So one option is to look at building repairs and maintenance. We have an old HVAC system, we have roof leaks, we have repairs that need to be made, and we've been creative in figuring out how we can earn more income to cover those repairs. So part of it could be used for just regular wear and tear and building maintenance. The next idea is really around how do we revitalize the space. So going back to that challenge of getting back to 35,000 visitors or people in that space a year. Many chambers actually rent out their space. So the visitor space is a beautiful room that we could rent out. The conference rooms, many chambers rent out their conference room spaces to members, but our technology, our Wi-Fi, some of those things that we have available aren't necessarily modernized to a place where I'd feel really excited about, charging somebody to use those spaces. So I think those things are important. In the visitor center right now, it's set up for visitors. And since the invention of the smartphone, so many visitors, when they visit a place, they're using their phones to get their tourism information. So we have all kinds of racks around that space that, not a lot of people are requesting brochures. So what if we decided to reinvent that space? Coffee shops are really important. What if we invited a coffee shop locally to come in and do a revenue share model where they're serving coffee in our visitor space? What if there were nice bistro tables and seating so we had a touchdown space for people in the community to come and work remotely? What if we worked with our Arts and Culture Alliance and we invited different performing artists to come into the visitor center space at 3 o'clock on Friday afternoons, and so people could come and finish their week, working on email and listening to some amazing artists. We could use the space for pop-up shops for local artists. We could use the space for all kinds of different reasons, but in order to do that, we do believe that there should be a little bit of revitalization to make it so that it's more usable in that way. Those are just a couple of the ideas. Do you want to share any of your thoughts, Rick?
My other idea was, I was a big part that we would have ran out of money, with the $19,000, we would have been out of money. So the board, we refinanced, is we're trying to look to be self-sustained. So we're looking at all our affiliations, all of our lead, I still think we've worked with Troy in the city. We'd like to put signage up there. We think we could put a sign down there and then sell our advertising on the sign to help pay and lower that rent. We really think we could rent the space out for more, have activities there. It's the best view in the city, so it's one of those things that we think that we can be a major entertainment to have people come down there. The other part of that $300,000 is that the Ignite has a location that we don't charge rent, so Tony's able to be in the building rent-free as part of the agreement towards the setup of that, so.
For the signage too, we've had this challenge with our nonprofits and with community events, and where in our town can people go to see what's happening in our community? And so having some kind of a sign that's tied to the visitor center and the chamber could be used to really promote community events that are happening and just give people information. And that's kind of the idea of it. Could be a really great resource for our community. In addition, we could use our members and some of those, business organizations that are looking for opportunities to promote community events, and their advertising funds to help us. If we had a sign like that, we probably could take care of our monthly mortgage of $6,000 maybe just through advertising revenue alone. So we're trying to get creative. I think at the heart of it all is such a beautiful space in our city. It's run down, it needs pressure washed, we need the landscaping fixed, we gotta get the roof fixed, our women's bathroom has leaks in it. So the funds could be used for regular building maintenance, and we could do some really creative things to make it more of a hub and get it back to the place where it's the heart of the city and it's bustling with members and with community members and visitors.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
I have one, Mr. Chairman.
Brad?
So, the building doesn't look bad, but it does look a little tired.
It looks tired.
And there's been a lot of changeover in management at the chamber in the last few years. I think probably hasn't helped with things, so. When you alluded to the fact that Ignite's not paying rent for their office there, what do you plan for the future on that? You're saying that's
The same. I mean, we would
Okay.
love to keep that intact.
Okay.
I mean, and continue to allow Tony to use, he's a huge part of our community and revitalizing all the different districts through your organization. So we would love to continue to offer that to him.
okay? Thanks.
Well, just for feedback, discussion's sake, that, if we're looking at, for Ignite, taking a portion of our funds to, basically contribute, I guess, to the chamber building, at different levels. I'm supportive of the chamber, but I'm also, I guess in my role of trying to weigh and the public funds and, something like the park that we just discussed, I can make one case, versus this is a tougher case, particularly if what I'm hearing right is, well, you're able to do a great refi, which sounds good, and that, takes care of some of that, and some of the savings could be used in this. Now, one thing I would say, just hearing this, is that even though I can appreciate that if Ignite, if we don't pay rent, that's a great thing, although I've been parts of lots of nonprofits around, and frankly, you have to pay the rent. And so if in our, going forward, if that was a reasonable expense and, we need to pay rent, we'd do it somewhere else, and if that helps the cause. So anyway, that's just my, for the board, I guess, my feedback.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Steve?
Time isn't really of the essence, right? This is conceptual, and so if we needed some more information, for me, I would like to see some more specifics. I would like to, I agree with what Brad says. The building is aging. I mean, the exterior patio, it's got a beautiful patio out there, but it needs a lot of repair, right? And if we look at that list, we have public restrooms, which was a great addition, public gathering space, the streetscaping and sidewalks. I guess for me, if we could get a list and an estimate similar to what we saw with the Rotary Group that could be presented to us, so we could see exactly where the funds are being spent, and hopefully the funds are spent to rehab or to create more uses for the general public. Because these are public dollars.
We certainly can do that. So I was involved, the treasurer for the Rotary one. I'm actually the one who put that stuff together, so I was, let them go. But on this thing here, we just found out about this. I would have been I was with Ms. Garcia all day long. We've been at NIC interviews for the last 3 days of our live interview, and the NIC presidents for 3 full days. But we would have known in the head, we would have had much more like what John had. We just literally found out about it, and we've been working as a thing to really revitalize what she's done with the chamber. We're up over almost 70 new members, And we had a scholarship fund where we gave 52 kids $2,000 each. It was one of the neatest events that this city's had in a long time. And so we're trying to build on that energy, getting people there. We will come back with any detail you want. It was just, your meeting was coming up, we found out about it, and we wanted to come down here and say, we'd love to partner with you. And that wasn't a threat on the rent. That's the left-brain accountant in me thinking, we're giving you rent, and we're trying to help, because it's just going to build. It's not, this is going to be here a lot longer than me and Linda are in there. It's going to be some of the next names. So when people see names on the board, it'll be other people down the road. So we'll come back with whatever details you need, but I think it's something worthwhile that we could make a thing last for a long time, because it is a building that is, we're putting a lot of maintenance, a lot of MacGyver, duct tape and bubble gum, keeping that thing going right now.
And when Tony originally talked with me about this, we are really at the brainstorming phase of just thinking about ideas. Ideally, I was thinking that maybe we could make some changes for this summer for the tourist season, but there's no way we're even close to being able to do that. So my goal was to have really a nice, as soon as the summer season and the rush is over, then we really take the time to build out the plan and make those improvements so that we're ready to go by next summer. So that was my original timeline before I even talked with Tony about this as a potential opportunity. We're at the very beginning phases, and we can certainly put those ideas together and work on getting estimates for you.
Well, I agree with everything Steve said, and I think you've got a good start here. But I agree with everything Steve said. He's got some good points there, and that's a fantastic refinance that you did on there. And I sense the chamber, has probably been so cash-starved trying to make the rent payments and, debt service payments and so forth, that maintenance has probably slid by a little bit over the years. So, yeah, it could use some freshening up. And I got to tell you, it's exciting to hear all your enthusiasm and your ideas you have to re-energize the chamber.
Thank you.
I think it's a great
I
place. and
agree.
does
Nice to hear, really
great
is.
things
Very
there,
much.
so this is exciting. And so, yeah, I'd look forward to seeing you come back here and we move forward on this.
And you do make a great point, Rick, about the free rent. I would have thrown that out myself, too. So Ignite has gotten value over the years in that partnership, so I don't think that can be discounted. But I would like to see, if you could come back with maybe some hard numbers on what the improvements to a public space would be. I think that would be.
Is there we didn't know, is there a deadline that you need to have it spent by? That was my concern. That's why we came down today, and I left the meeting, and then I see you and think, thanks for staying, but I wanted to be here because I think this is really important for our city.
Well, the reason I brought this on the calendar today in May is that I figured we'd need to start the conversation and kind of see where the board wanted to go. So this is a perfect introduction to the topic, and I think we need to have resolution by August on this.
Yeah, we'll have something for sure by then.
So we have June and July coming up, whichever you could make. I guess if you have anything by the June meeting, I'd be interested to hear that, so we still have July.
So a month, Brennan?
Does it need to be 300,000? I mean, in terms of guidance back to them, I understand not to exceed, but that is a lot of money, and there are a lot of asks on us. So is that the amount as far as guidance to them to develop specific?
The remaining balance on the note is $263,273.
Okay.
So that's what the board has latitude to spend on this note.
Okay, 263 and some change.
Yes.
Just
Dan?
kind of a down to nuts and bolts going forward, and I know we're looking at things we're trying to get into Lake District funding, but let's say, that comes and goes, but if Ignite is located down there and we end up wanting to pay them rent, I assume that we could use money from our other income to pay rent, even if the place we're renting isn't in one of our districts.
Correct. It's just general G&A expenses.
263,000 of rent.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And 267 of them. Okay,
Wonderful.
so then come back in a month,
Great.
the June board meeting?
Do you have a date?
June 15th is the next
15th.
board meeting, if that gives you enough time, or you could go to the July board meeting.
Great, thank you.
I just don't, I just mentioned June because since we're getting down to the wire, I don't think it hurts if you could have something by June, just in case we needed another month, you still had July then, and we had a little bit more time to refine it some
I
more.
think we'd be safer going with July. Just,
Okay,
we're
all
gonna
right.
get bids, and we want to do it right. We would like to come once and, give you, I
Okay.
think July would give us more time.
Okay.
Well, that would be the third Wednesday in July, right, Tony?
The 20th.
Okay.
Perfect.
Wonderful, thank you all.
Thank you.
Next up, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to invite Phil up for Atlas project update and entry monument change order conversation.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Hoskin and Commissioners.
Mr. Boyd?
Let's see here. Okay. So the agenda for today is to give you a Atlas update and pictures. I'm going to talk about the Ramsey Pit update as well. I need some general direction on Phase 3, which is the Mount Hink area. We've talked about it in previous board meetings, and then the entry monument change order Tony mentioned. So these are photographs from May 5th. Kind of gives you a good idea. You can see what's happening there. This is Area 6. This is Active West development. You can see the park is starting to green in. You'll notice this as I show some other pictures here. This is the clover that Bill Greenwood decided to use in this area because it generates its own nitrogen. So he doesn't have to fertilize any of this area, and you can see the difference in the green. And you'll see it some more as we move through in the pictures. You can see Mount Hink slowly disappearing up in here. This is Area 3 and 4, which the Toll Brothers were headed to closing on June 15th for that. So there's a bunch of infrastructure work that needs to get completed prior to that timeline as part of your DDA agreement with them. Tommy LaRiviere, who's here, if there's any questions for Tommy. We worked through some reorganization of his process. He was actually working up in this area. We've talked before about Toll Brothers, and they kind of have their way that they do things, and they want certain things done before they closed. Doesn't quite make sense to us. But working with Tommy and Tony, we worked out a way to reorganize LaRiviere's crews and move them down into here in order to accomplish those things. You can start to see this is in Area 10. So Atlas Road is right here. The Lance Douglas property is out there. And this is Area 12. So these are the multifamily units going up here. The Butler development, Area 8, is right here. No work has started on that. They're currently trying to pull a building permit in this area. And then, of course, the Bluegrass Atlas Building Group, you can see that they're moving rapidly along.
Quick question, Phil. So Butler's Area 8 there, that's being used as staging area then?
It was. He worked out some sort of deal with these guys to allow them to stage their roof trusses down there.
Okay.
I think they bought them way early, which you guys can imagine why. And so they just needed somewhere to stage them. You can just start to, excuse me, you can see the start of the retaining wall that's going up in here. One of the questions I get asked frequently is, why is it so dense down there? And I always remind people we can't lose sight of 2018, when the objective of the board in the city was to pull off that 4,000 feet of waterfront, the most valuable piece of property, put it into a public space. And the financial feasibility was just barely meeting, thank you, Tony. Was just barely meeting the district's criteria at the time. And so we had to keep jamming density in there. And part of the jamming that density in there was, digging into the slopes in order to create developable space up in this area here. So you can see that, and we can't ever lose sight of it. Just because the real estate market's going crazy, it wasn't at the time. Here, again, you can see some more of the green in here. The water's still down, and more activities going on here with Atlas Building Group. We have our site manager, Eric, who is also doing construction observation work. He makes rounds every day, developing relationships with the contractors to get them to behave better. For instance, today he was out there and they're setting trusses, and they go out and put their outriggers down and on the asphalt, and the city will eventually catch them. And, but it'll just be another gyration to go through. So he stops them and gets them to put pads underneath the outriggers in order to minimize the damage out there. Another photograph looking west. And then that's a shot of, you can see the multifamily units going in there. So the Mount Hink to Ramsey hauling operation, La Riviere is still running 18 to 20 trucks a day, somewhere around 5,000 yards a day. Today, it's about 150,000 cubic yards. One of the things that we had to get into is we have a change order which uses 121,240 of the $245,750 contingency the board approved. The majority of that, the 75,000, was to create, which is a term I didn't know, called an aquitard. As we were doing some analytical work on the pit, the aquifer is about 75 feet below the bottom of that pit, and so our water quality people in our office started having anxiety about that, and we started researching how can we create a low permeability barrier between the sawdust we're going to put in there and the aquifer. Idaho doesn't have a bunch of regulations. Washington has regulations, so we adopted some of their regulations and worked with DEQ and our soils engineer, and coincidentally there was material on site that we asked ITD, can we just borrow that material, take and push it to create this impermeable layer at the bottom of the pit, and then put the sawdust on top of that. And they of course like that idea because everyone wants to protect the aquifer. That was not in La Riviere's original scope of work, nor were the deep injection wells, which we're going to grade the site so the water hits these deep injection wells and goes past the sawdust and down deep into the ground. So it's not saturating any of that sawdust material. And again, these are kind of above and beyond standards. We actually use some Canadian standards to establish some of these design criteria. And then there were some things we had to work out with ITD, and I'll show you pictures of them here. As we worked through the process, they were pushing on us a little bit, pushing on you, saying, well, gosh, we thought you were going to do this, and well, that's not what the agreement stated, and we ended up having to make some accommodations for them. But it is within the contingency.
In all of the ARPA funding that is out there, isn't there not a set aside in that? I'm always in the search of funds, right? But isn't there a set aside for some water protection and that type of stuff?
I think there is, but that money had gone to the city, and we had talked to the city about that, but I think you guys had allocated that funding, or the city had allocated that funding, as I understood, Commissioner Woodmeyer.
So I guess the question of the council people is, has the ARPA already been spoken for, or is that still in conversation?
There's still a lot to talk about.
Yeah, there's still a lot, there's opportunity for sure.
So I was just gonna say, if there's some opportunity, if you're protecting the aquifer, and, because I do know that's a part of our ARPA is water protection, so that could be a possible source of funding.
I will pursue that. Couple of pictures here. You're looking north. Here's Ramsey Road. The definition is a little bit hard to see here, how deep it is. You can see La Riviere's equipment down here. This is the approach that we built. Part of our deal with ITD was building that approach. As we started through the design process, we got into a little bit of we won't call it a regulatory, maybe it's a little bit of a permitting pickle. Coeur d'Alene really didn't want to leave that with a gravel surface there. ITD wasn't happy about it, and that's where some of the things we had to work through in that change order I mentioned earlier. When La Riviere is done and they leave here, we're going to pave from that point out to here, and there's permanent fencing that goes into that area. And so ITD will now use this as their primary entrance, which the benefit to Coeur d'Alene citizens is it takes the ITD right turns off of Marie. And I think I might have mentioned to the board before that the snow plows clog up that intersection, so citizens get backed up. And so that was the purpose of that change order item. Here's another view looking back to the south. You can see some of the material being deposited in here and Le Rivier's operation just coming through here, they circle back around that way and head back out.
Yeah, it looks like you're getting fairly close,
It's a little deceiving.
but that hole's a lot shallower than it used to be.
It definitely is, and Mount Hink is a lot smaller.
Yeah.
Which brings up the next topic. I showed this to the board, I think last month, and it showed the area where we had an anticipated structural soils, but we found non-structural soils. And I think I mentioned to the board last month that I continue to get nervous about our pro forma here. And if, to refresh the board's memory, the objective was spend the amount of money necessary to remove Mount Hink for what we can sell the land for. So it was kind of this break-even proposition. Once we ran into this, I got nervous about it. I got with Tommy and started talking to him about can we change our means and methods and pick around the edges here in order to try to figure out really what's underneath here, because there's so much variability that you can't go drill holes in there and get any kind of consistent information like if you're doing a geotechnical study. And the reason for that was if we could pick around the edges here, maybe we could develop this, and if it's really bad in the middle, maybe we just leave that. But the price of leaving that is we might not be able to develop any of this area. And that's about plus or minus 30 units here. So I'm leading up to kind of a big picture question for the board that involves how much risk do you want to take? Because we're digging into the unknown, literally. And one option is to kind of get Mount Hink reduced and just stop digging and just not do anything with this and leave it natural. We would forego about 30 units in there, 30 dwelling units in there. The other option is to keep digging, and it could be that it turns out that, gosh, we run into some structural material, we run into some unsuitable material, but we're close to our land sales costs. The other end of it might be that we start digging through this and we get down into here and the project costs keep going up and up and up in order to create developable property there. And in that situation, you can see here's what I convinced Tommy, and now he's been a good sport about it, but this change in methods is a little more complicated, and we talked about it yesterday, and I've reached the tolerance of his patience with me because it decreases his efficiency, and so it drives his costs up. And so we kind of need to make a decision about whether we're going to go back to his operation, which is to fall back into here, and if you can just envision, he wants to dig deep, because as he digs deep, he can just feed his equipment from the top. Here, he's digging flat. And so he has to push all his material down from the top. We're not seeing much variability in here. It's all pretty bad material. We were hoping to see something good. So the question that it leads up to for the board is the original project, the development costs essentially equal the land sales values. If we find more unsuitable, we might find ourselves upside down where the development costs are greater than the land sales value. You guys, unlike other developers, have the advantage of tax increment that you can consider, well, yes, we're upside down on capital costs, but we're going to still generate tax revenue if the district stays open. There's two other considerations that the revenue off of RFPs 3, 4, and 5 performed much better than we projected in our original, about 40% higher than what I last presented to the Finance Committee in October of 2021. And I'm not trying to say, well, gosh, you got more money, so let's go spend it, digging the hole. I just want to make sure the board understands all the I guess, funding you have available. And then the other part is the Phase 3 land sales may be higher than projected because we projected them pretty conservatively, somewhere in the, I think it was $100,000 a lot range. The number we just received from Toll Brothers was $220,000. And granted, it's a different part of the development, but the revenue we got off of the Toll Brothers was about $220,000 a unit versus the number I projected in the original pro forma up here, which was $100,000 a unit, $105,000 a unit. So I know I'm tossing all kinds of information out to you guys, But I was purposely slowing this down until we opened RFP 5 because I would probably feel different about it. I thought you might feel different about it, but I wanted to postpone this discussion with you until you knew the revenue that was coming off of RFP 5. You know, was it below our projections or above our projections? And it was above our projections.
Mr. Chairman?
Comments?
So, I had a couple of questions. I guess I'll start with the first one. So, as long as you got that picture up, if we dig deep, I mean, what happens, eventually what happens to the pile? At some point, that pile's gotta go.
It does, but if the board were to say tonight, gosh, we just don't want to go at any more risk. Let's just leave this natural. Maybe we'll try to develop the edge up here because there's some structural that we think is up here. We would probably stop hauling to Ramsey Pit because there's no point. I mean, maybe we could get a little lower on this and we would develop some models for the board to look at on what is considered an acceptable hill left there. But there's kind of no point in hauling it away if you're not going to develop underneath it.
But what do we do with a pile, though? I mean, do we make like a sledding hill for the park and rec, or?
Totally, yeah.
Or would we be better off to haul it away and have a level park instead of a hill with a?
And those are considerations, and I guess the big question for today for the board is, do we want to continue to head down this path for land development? Which is probably the highest and best use for this. Green space is probably not the highest and best use, because you guys have plenty of green space on the waterfront.
And the other thing is, you showed the picture of the whole piece of property. So,
sorry,
assuming we don't find any structural material in the center of it, are you saying around the periphery of it, it's all buildable and there might be a park in the center? Is that an option, or is there not enough to build around the periphery of it?
There might be some around the edge here, but I'm still uncertain about it.
Okay.
And where the direction, just to chase that thought, the direction that we're headed with the mining operation, this shows the picture. The Riviera has been slowly trying to get the top knocked down so we could head down this path and start prospecting for structural, which would be the edge you were just mentioning there, Commissioner Jordan, about could we build on this edge. We had to get the top knocked down because you can't have the mountain falling into your hole. So La Riviera has been pulling this down and getting ready to mine this operation through here. There's forces conspiring against us continuing to do that. One of them is diesel prices, because now, you know, Tommy's been willing to accommodate some of this, but he's getting pushed by diesel prices. And if you can imagine, even since we priced the thing, he's getting pushed on labor as well, because the labor is going nuts in lots of industries, but particularly his industry. So that's part of what has been pushing this conversation of where do we want to head with this?
Yeah, the other thing is the pit on Ramsey. I mean, there's some advantages to getting that pit filled, but there's some unknowns as if the city will ever acquire that land or not.
Correct.
But if we stop here, what do there's still a big depression in the pit out there.
Correct.
It'd be nice to get that pit up to ground level. And this is going to be really difficult. I think this is tough enough if a private developer is talking with his engineer, but there's a whole bunch of us here.
It is.
That have to talk with you and decide on what to do here.
Yeah, and what we decide tonight doesn't necessarily cast the die permanently. You know, what we would do, just to chase that out a little bit more, is he has enough of this backed off. You know, he's now pushed it away from him, or mined it away from him. You can see the edge of Pit 2 right here. We still haven't found the permanent edge of Pit 2. Going back to your plan view, it's right here. But now we can start mining this direction. But if we start mining down, we're kind of committing ourselves to advancing our development. So we may mine down here, get in deep, and decide, gee, we're down 15 feet. We can remediate that. We're going to open up the call for structural soils from elsewhere, you know, to people to bring us structural soils in large quantities. And so we could start incrementally advancing our developable land to the east. and we keep going down and keep backfilling behind us. We're going to approach ITD about backhauling structural material from their site, because they have a big, you can't see it, over here there's a big non-flat. They have a very steep part of the site that we would love to start to borrow material from, because we could very cost effectively borrow it and backhaul it, because we're running trucks back empty.
And that's non-suitable material for their use?
Well, it's a big slopey hill. And
Right.
so what they would end up with, they would end up with a big flat spot, which you'd prefer a flat spot if you, even if it's not ITD in the future, it probably wants to be a flat spot, so you can more cost effectively build
Right,
on.
I'm just saying they'd let us have the material because it's not suitable for what they need.
The land
for-
use is
for
not
spreading
suitable.
on ice.
Yeah,
or what- okay.
correct,
Yeah.
correct.
For a price. Brennan?
So when you say not suitable for development, so if we forego 20 or 30 units, are there other uses, but something between green space and units, like I don't know, soccer fields or something that is still a public good that is not maybe the units and the revenue from that and the land sale, but still something that is usable, even if it's not developable for its original purpose?
Yes, so there's two ends of the recreational spectrum. There's the passive recreation, just green space, you go out there, throw the ball with your dog, and they run wild. The other end of it is active recreation, which you guys have funded a lot of active recreation, Memorial Field, the sports courts down there, things like that. There's passive recreation and active recreation down here. If the board were heading in that direction, we would want to go back to the city, as Mayor Widmeyer had us do previously, start with Park and Rec, go through the chain of command and what does the city need, and work through that. Passive recreation, you spray it with some dryland grass seed and wave goodbye and say, have a good time. Active recreation, you start spending lots of money developing fields and whatnot on it. But that's a long answer to yes, it could be developed in a couple of different ways.
Seems like awkward to kind of stop and have a pile and a mystery down there.
I agree.
And a potentially missed opportunity. I mean, we know there's a risk, right, that we might have to remediate it or do something, but it just, having an unfinished pile in a really nice development seems awkward.
I agree with you, but I just want to be respectful of the board's money, and we haven't got to the point of no return, so to speak, but we're kind of getting to the edge of it, and we're going to start mining in there and getting after
It wasn't too long ago when Bill Greenwood was in here and we were trying to build some active green space for him, and he didn't want it, so. And I agree with Commissioner Mandel, is a hill left in that area there, plus what Brad was saying, you've got a pit that's half full, and I see Mr. Riviere brought some backup with him today. I'm not sure why, was he afraid? But I would think that he should move that dirt out of there the best cost-effective way he can, and then we'll see what we have when we get to the bottom of it. And especially if you've got soil you could bring back that's suitable, that's a good value.
Yeah, and that's what we'll attempt to do is work with ITD. They're, of course, you can imagine going through the process of trying to acquire material from them. The other one we're considering a little bit is the Highway 41 project over the next 3 years will generate a considerable amount of export, but it's also over the next 3 years. And this board has not been particularly patient about getting development done. And so we would start to looking at other sources.
Mr. Chairman?
Steve?
You're talking about, and I agree with Brendan too, is that leaving that hill there, I think is really not an option.
Well, yeah.
In my book.
It's an eyesore.
But, so on that unsuitable material, can you build parking over the top of it?
Probably.
So there could be a change of use there. I mean, if you put in a commercial area and then there was a larger need of parking, then you could build parking on that unsuitable. So if we look at that area 20, do we know at all what could potentially be buildable, or do we not know anything right now?
We don't really know much, and so back to our exploratory efforts is, as this gets down, Tommy will start mining down here So that'll help us advance the developable area to the east. And then as the mountain goes down, he'll now be able to start excavating trenches through the center of it so we can actually see from a cross-section what it looks like and answer technical questions like, can we build a parking lot on it? And the answer is probably yes, provided we'd have to build a raft subgrade and some other technical things, but we could do that. But those are the types of things that I keep thinking about. Tony, when we started this project, he keeps saying this thing will change at, dozens and dozens of times. That's kind of the changes that may happen as we work through this segment of the project. I just want to make sure the board's kind of up to speed on the variables, and we may have to shuck and jive a little bit if the land use changes.
So if we look at that whole entire area, so say if we go out to 100 acres, right?
Yeah.
More than likely is that you're going to get down to some level of suitable material. Because there's not any area there that's naturally just all unsuitable.
Correct.
So there's suitable there somewhere.
Yep.
It's just a matter of where it's at.
And we have an idea where it's at, but just like I said earlier, what made me nervous is when we did our projections of where it was, when we ran into this being unsuitable, and we kept mining through this saying, well, maybe we'll find some structural. And we haven't found a lot of it. We are getting crafty. Let me find the right picture here. And we're borrowing this material here, although Tommy's not happy about this one either because the moisture content is super high, because it's got a little higher organic content in it, but we're borrowing this material and hauling it back over here and using it. And it's just when it's over optimum moisture, it's hard to work with. And so again, he's being a pretty good sport about it, moving this over here. So we are using some of it for structural uses. We just don't know if we're going to find any more.
Best case scenario is that it goes to plan and a lot of that is buildable.
Yep.
Best case scenario. Worst case scenario is we have taken all of the Mount Hink off of there and we have a flat open space, right?
That's unsuitable to build.
Unsuitable to build, but flat and
Maybe
usable
usable
for something.
Unsuitable to develop.
A big hill of that junk there
Is gone.
but if we left it, it's just useless.
Yes, it's
So
different.
I think we want to create some use there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree.
Okay.
Chances are there'll be some developable land there. And the hill is an eyesore, and we have to get rid of that hill, and we should fill the pit in.
Yeah,
There's a lot of moving parts.
there is, and
I'd like to see acquisition of that 40 acres on Ramsey, and that's another deal with the city council. But hopefully that could work out at some point in the future, and then we can have the pit filled in.
okay. Well, based on this input, I'm gonna proceed, but I'll be back maybe not next month, but the following month. I'll have an update as we continue to find more things.
Just
But-
one more quick question.
Yes, sir.
On the money part of this, at what point are we gonna start spending more money on this, where you say we could get in deeper on this? Are we not there yet?
We're right now, the overage associated with this piece of material right here, I went back and calculated, and we have spent about $70,000 more removing this and hauling it away. We probably, if we need to replace that, we're going to spend another $70,000 or $80,000 to bring back in structural, unless I can get it from we can get it from ITD, or I can get other contractors to haul it in.
Okay.
So we're right in the $70,000 range, and this is a $5 million endeavor, and it's $5 million worth of land.
I just wondered, because you said
Yep.
at some point we'd be on the point of no return and be getting in deeper. But I think that's a reasonable amount of money, though, considering we're getting rid of that eyesore of a pile out there.
Okay. And those are the kind of the
Personally.
updates that you guys are gonna get from me when I come back. I'd say, I projected this much material that we would have in here. Here's what we've actually found, and now the number's up to whatever the number is. And at some point hopefully we'll get way through it and we won't have a big number and
Yeah.
we'll proceed as planned.
Mr. Chairman, another way to think about this too is that you look at the project holistically and not just look at areas 19 and 20 up there. We're doing so well on revitalizing the other parts of the project area that maybe the project area, the other parts subsidize a little bit more money to help clean up Mount Hink, which we thought all along might be an issue. So holistically, the project is doing fine. It's just if you look discreetly, as Phil's trying to, kind of budget 5 million and 5 million, I mean, we have the wherewithal to definitely deal with Mount Hink the way the board wants to.
No, I agree.
True, and I think I'd like to hear from other board members. I think we want to get the mountain gone as cheaply as possible. So, to get out a truckload here and a truckload there and push here and dig a ditch there, just have him haul the thing off.
Okay. I will forge ahead accordingly. And Tony's context is a good one. The numbers are, I've updated the latest pro forma based on what we've seen here. And there's, like I said, it's 40% higher than what we projected just in October. And the numbers the board saw in October were significant. We also have to caution it that some of the deals aren't closed yet. So we're still Toll Brothers on the first phase, on RFP 3 has to close, RFP 4 has to close, RFP 5 has to close. Don't see any reason why that shouldn't happen, but until it's closed, it's not closed.
I've heard that analogy before.
Yes, you have, haven't you?
Well, just for the general feedback that, because I don't want to forget too, I mean, the partner of the city in this, that, when this came to council and we made the commit, going to use Ramsey Road and do all of that. And so the expectation is, yeah, that's because we're going to move that mountain of stuff out of there. And if you're like me, I mean, I drive by there and the mountain's going down and I keep visualizing, wow, this is going to be great when that's not in the way. And, and we've gone this far and kind of bit the bullet for using Ramsey Road and all that. So it would say kind of short-sighted do that. But I do appreciate, with our contractor, Tony, that, I mean, if, he can't eat everything, and if some costs go up and we're hearing about that, we're going to have to deal with that. But I guess what I'm hearing is you're kind of giving us a bit of a yellow flag that for some costs, and we're doing it with our eyes open, and
which is greatly appreciated.
Yeah, for me, I'm saying, go ahead.
What commitment did we make to the homeowners right to the east of that mountain? When I know when it piled up there and they couldn't see the sun anymore, we were hearing about it.
Yeah. I don't know that we made it.
If we don't haul it off.
Well, we could make it lower than what it was even before you all acquired the land. At this point, we could lower it. But I'm not sure that we made any particular commitment. I did not.
Well, this is urban renewal, mitigating this whole site and taking care of this. This is part of urban renewal. So.
I agree with you, but it's your all money, the community's money, and I'm not going to go spend it without you.
Well, no, I appreciate that.
Helping me through those discussions. Okay, so we will forge ahead. Moving on to the entry monuments, we talked about this last month. There is 6 monuments. You can see them here, 2 at Atlas, 2 at Heartwood, and 2 on Suzanne. They were over budget. We talked about that last month. I floated it to the board, to get a general reaction. And then have been thinking about it a little more in the memo I wrote to the board, and chasing Commissioner Widmeyer's idea that we've been talking a little bit about in here. If this actually turns commercial and we go build monuments here, you can imagine the commercial use is might say, well, gosh, that's where I wanted to put my grocery store sign, and now you have a monument there. Can you move your monument? Because the monument might make more sense here, because the neighborhood would start in this area if this was a little bit more of a commercial use, which was why the recommendation I had rolled out to the board in the memo was to build, one here and one down here. And I provided a little bit of imagery here. This is I'm no Del Hatch, but I stole his work that he did for us. And to give you some perspective, this is coming into the roundabout. The idea was to put 2 monuments here. Would one suffice, because you're kind of headed that way anyway, so it's right in your line of sight. This is the one at Heartwood, and these are a little harder to see until you turn south. So they might actually be better if they were moved further south in this location instead of being up here. especially if this turns into a commercial use. And then the ones on Suzanne, this is what Dell had originally envisioned, and perhaps is one satisfactory for creating that sense of arrival and definition and whatnot. So, as Tony mentioned, you probably certainly have the budget or the revenue to build 2 signs, but trying to stay within the budget that was originally set by the board at $360,000. I would recommend you do that one and just one there. And that is an action item.
Quick question. So when we switch over to one sign instead of 2 signs, would the one sign be on the lane of the road you're driving in, so it's in front of you? I saw it 2 different ways on there.
Well, so on this one, I actually put it on this side.
Right, just asking.
Yeah, it could go on either side. I don't know that there's a right or wrong way to do that. That
If
might
it
be
was
a landscape.
further down away from the intersection, being on the passenger, or I mean, on your travel side would probably be better.
That's what I'm wondering. I mean, I'm open to discussion, I'm just, yeah, raising the question on this, so we have some say in it, if,
Phil, what was the price difference between if you retain the 2 signs at Suzanne and then the other side was 1 sign? Was it the roundabout
So there's, the signs at Suzanne are about $60,000 a piece.
piece? Okay.
So if you put 2 in, it's 120, and then the major monument, whoops, at Atlas, this is a really significant monument here. It actually has a retaining wall behind it now as well. And that's the expensive $300,000 monument. And it includes the screening on it. You can kind of see the screening back in this picture here. So this is just the size of the monument. The screening was actually run down that way.
When do the signs need to be finished?
I don't know that you have a deadline. We do get asked by the developers, particularly Toll Brothers, is when are you going to establish our neighborhood, and when are we going to have some arrival, and when are, because they're really trying to create value, which is understandable, right? Because they're trying to maximize, they just spent a bunch of money on this dirt, buying this land, and they want to create value out of it. So they're very aware of the aesthetics of the neighborhood, the entry monuments, the landscaping, the paving, the irrigation system, lighting, signage.
well, what's practical on a timeline to have it done?
Tommy might have to answer that question as far as the schedule. If we were to get kicked loose on it now.
Well, if we got kicked loose on it now, we would probably have them done right after Halloween. So some of the issues that we've got going in the industry right now, there's a concrete shortage. So we're only allowed to get 30 yards of concrete a day where we're used to pouring 300 yards a day. So that's going to hinder, especially with these monuments, the amount of concrete that's in them. It's really going to hinder how fast we can produce them along. One of the other items is the fact that the signs are lit. So we had to sub that work out because it all has to be on the UL thing. So we'll be at their mercy as well. And I don't know what their industry is experiencing as far as supply chain issues and those kinds of things. So I would, in a normal sense, I would have them done in 90 days. In the current market that we have, I would probably project somewhere between, like say right after that Halloween, first part of November.
Yeah.
The reason I was asking is if it is commercial on the right-hand side of the east side of Heartwood there, then the later the better. Because, I mean, that would have to be after the RFP 6.
Well, we probably won't put RFP 6 out until late this year. And I think there's some work to be done over here from a land use perspective, because Tony's got the team thinking about other opportunities there, the commercial components, and is there a mixed use component there that there might be a demand for? And we haven't chased the thought much more than that because we're still thinking about the the soils in here. But Tony's kind of getting us pointed to think a little bit more broadly than just,
Well, you were mentioning that it might be a better idea to move the signage away from South East. So
Yeah.
when do you think they should be built then, if we do that?
I would build this one and this one, whether it's one here and two here, or two and two, whatever the board decides. I would build these as soon as you possibly can, because there's the primary entrance. We probably won't open this entrance for quite a while, because we want to hold this area undeveloped as long as we possibly can, without public coming in here. We might open up this section, so you could come down here and make this route, but leaving this a construction entrance reduces impact on the neighborhood, isolates the contractor, and, just is a better situation for us. So this one might be a year away or 2 years away.
Okay, that makes sense. That's what I was looking for.
Yep.
So if we prioritize those in terms of sequence, then it also helps with Tommy's concrete quota, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we would probably focus on this one to begin with and these second.
Okay.
Phil, do you have your recommended slide? There's a slide, I thought that you had the
Yep.
recommended.
This was my recommendation, is that we just, and my objective is kind of stay within the budget that the board originally set, still create a sense of arrival. One monument is two better, yes, probably, but kind of back to your discussions about the park, do we look for opportunity to stay within our budgets?
So I would like to make a motion that we proceed along the lines of the two monuments at $360,000.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Quick question. So we discussed placement on the one. Do we leave that up to our engineer, or what do we think?
You wouldn't leave it up to me. I would engage Del Hatch to comment on us for this one here. I think we're probably all in agreement that
Yeah.
here, the primary monument should be here. Here, I would rely on Del Hatch, and maybe what I would do is send Tony the email conclusion, and he could distribute it to the board, and,
Okay.
there's, even by next meeting, if the board doesn't like the decision, we can change it next meeting.
Well, I thought it was going to be started next week.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, just a question. So if the board chooses tonight to go ahead and put one at Suzanne, how much of an issue would it be if they decided later to put another one across?
It won't be, obviously, there's probably going to be a cost increase to it. And we'll be working in a more active neighborhood, because the more vehicular counts, when we start opening this street up, when we start opening Atlas and Suzanne, the vehicle counts will get up there, so the traffic control becomes a little bit more, so everything gets a little bit more expensive when that happens, when we do them later. Up here, we won't have traffic, because we can build them while it's closed. But once you get the public involved, I think everyone knows what that does to the contractors. Your efficiency goes down and whatnot. So it'd be more expensive.
I bring that up, Mr. Chairman, because I anticipate we might get some feedback that if you put one monument down there at Suzanne, people are going to say it looks half done. And that it's not an entryway, it's not an arch, it's not aesthetically, I think you're just going to potentially get some, when's the other one going to come up? Or, where's the canoe out on the feathers type thing. So I just, bringing that up for conversation.
I thought maybe the massiveness of the sign would look okay, and one would look right there, but you could be right. It could look like there's a part missing.
I'm thinking two just looks to me to be too much.
I agree.
That's what
I
I
think
wondered.
two is too much. I like one.
Well, we have a
I mean, if we hate it, we can get another one, right?
Right. We have a
There you go.
motion, we have a motion and second now to build the one, and then we can come back and build the
Then you
second
can
one.
add the second.
Let's think about it for a month. So,
I guess that makes more sense than building two and taking one away.
There you go.
and it helps with that concrete quota too.
Yeah. Yeah. With all
All right,
Tommy's contacts, he must have a way to get more concrete somewhere.
Surprisingly, he doesn't. I've tried that too.
We had a shortage last year, I think it was, and then that kind of went away, and I was surprised to hear about this new one a couple of weeks ago.
Tommy mentioned to me the other day that he's actually opened up to take anybody. So he has his curb machine sitting out there with a guy standing there waiting for other contractors that can't accept concrete. And so they ship it to Atlas, and the guy runs a little bit of curb and then waits, cleans the machine out, and waits for some more.
This is crazy.
So red
Well,
lines.
we have a motion on the floor, so all in favor of proceeding with that option of 360,000? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, that's all I had, unless there's
I have
questions.
just one clarifying question on, actually, right in that main entrance area where now we can see the multi-level, I don't know, you said multi-family.
Oh, at Area
Is
10?
that, I forget, are those apartments or purchase or?
This group right here?
Yeah,
Yeah, those are apartments.
the new ones.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
The, just to kind of refresh the board's memory, this was multifamily rental product. This was Area 12, which is the one here.
Right.
Multifamily rental product. And at some point, the board said we've had our fill of that. And so we've really focused down in this area of for sale product. So condominiums like 5A and 13.
Right.
It's been important that we look for sale product there.
But just as a follow-up to what we just did, I think it's good that those signs, we gave the direction for those signs to go in, and if they're not, even now, the best case, kind of Halloween, or, I mean, we want those main signs up this year.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, good, thanks.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
So we're done off the air.
No,
Oh, sorry.
Not quite.
I thought we adjourned. Oh, we didn't adjourn
no,
yet.
we're
did
not
we?
adjourned yet.
Say anything bad?
That's all I have, Mr.
That's-
Chairman.
Okay.
I'll wait till
Time
we're
for
adjourned
board,
to see anything bad.
now on the agenda, it's time for board commissioner comments. Any comments from the board? This might be new to you. If you have something you'd like to share with us, then you can. And I would just like to reiterate that thank you for volunteering to being on the board, Amy. We look forward to working with you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I'd comment that I think we owe a lot to Mick for his service on the board. He did a great job, and I'm excited to have Amy on board.
Yep. Agreed. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Have a great night,
That's a
everybody.
wrap.
Dan, did you sign
I
this for
agree.
Nick?
I think if we have that.